On today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, with everything going on, how does Joe Mixon feel, and does C.J. Gardner-Johnson equal a better Calen Bullock?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation! It's Friday. We're going to the weekend, and we're going into the weekend together. We are your Texans Credential Media members. I'm John Hickman. That is Brian Big Sarge Backfield. Thank you for tapping into the Locked On Texans podcast and making us a part of your first listen of the day, and for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode, we dive into writing a story and making it look good. Super Bowl aside, because that's easy. What does a successful season for the Houston Texans look like? I know it's early April. We typically will talk about that later in the year, but let's start now with the Houston Texans making renovations across the offensive line and the team all together. Speaking of renovations, C.J. Gardner-Johnson can equal a better Calen Bullock going into his sophomore year and ultimately a better back end of that defense. But we open up today's show talking about, with everything going on, you know, Joe Mixon has never ran behind an elite offensive line. He's never had to do it. And I'm sure he's wanted to do that since the days of coming into the NFL. So we'll look at what Joe Mixon may feel, or how he may feel about his role with everything going on this offensive side of the ball. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Guys, if you haven't seen that, please go to Google. Check it out. Amazing, beautiful car. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. Big Sarge.
John Hickman, greetings and salutations from the West Coast.
California
love.
So you did the solo show. I did a solo show. Now we come back, do it together, kind of like podcast out. It's been a slow week for Houston. However, when you look at some of the the aspects of this team and how things have changed over the course of the last month and a half, Joe Mixon has got lost in the sauce a little bit. Not a bad way. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't warranted, a real conversation. But we were talking about what to talk about, and you mentioned, hey, how does Joe Mixon feel about this new offensive line and what his role will look like? Moving forward. So I want to pass it over to you when discussing Joe Mixon and his future with the Houston Texans.
Once again, greetings and salutations, John Hickman. Hey, Battle Red Nation, how y'all doing? Once again, hello from the West Coast. I'm out here covering the Houston Rockets. John, when you look at what Joe Mixon is to this Houston Texas team, you have to say to yourself, he is a key, vital part. And because we always talk about CJ first. And that's how our minds are wired. When we talk about NFL teams, the first person that we'll talk about, the first player, the first individual we talk about is the quarterback position. And when you're looking at the Houston Texans, you're talking about the quarterback, and then we'll automatically jump to a wide receiver. Hey, man, Nico, and what he was able to do. And, when we talk about the Texans need, hey, man, Nico needs somebody on the opposite side of him. But, we talked about this in the show, too, about, Joe Mixon is going to need a backup, too, because for the accolades that CJ got, for the accolades that Nico got, Joe Mixon got them as well. I mean, he was voted to the Pro Bowl, after going rushing for 1,016 yards, 11 touchdowns, and he only played in 12 full games because he missed 3.5 games. You remember that half game he got hurt in week 2 against the Chicago Bears after that illegal hip tackle, and that put him out for 3 games.
By the way, but the NFL was making a point to play a safety.
And he was still not happy about that. But to still be able to rush for that amount of yards, John, he had 7 games over 100 yards. And I think that he had, after he came back, his first 4 or 5 games, he rushed for over 100 yards. But then he had 5 games where he only had 34.8 yards, John. And that's when you get to saying, okay, when you are looking at what this team needs to do, and we talked about ad nauseum about the offensive line, that can't happen. If you got a Pro Bowl running back like that, that can't happen. You can't have your Pro Bowl running back having 5 games under 50 yards rushing. So if he was able to do that with that line last season, John, you look at it and you say, you brought him into a new situation last season. He's playing behind a new offensive line. He's playing in a new offensive scheme. He's playing with players that he's never played before. You get him acclimated, you get him used to doing that, and now all of a sudden you shake it up again. You remove 3 of the players that he's played with on that offensive line, and he does have some time playing behind Patterson, Scruggs, Fisher, Howard. But with the disarray and the confusion that we're having right now, not knowing who's going to start there's no one definitive starter right now for the Houston Texans offensive line. And so if we're thinking that, what is Joe Mixon thinking? Joe Mixon has to say, hey, man, y'all got to give me this. Y'all got to give me something. Let me know early on what's going on. Because in the midst of me trying to learn this system, I also got to learn how to run behind these guys. I think that people get it twisted, John. I don't think people really realize that these running backs, you can't just put a running back behind an offensive line and say, hey, man, find the hole. Okay, that's easy to do if you are playing behind somebody that you know. But if you're playing behind somebody you don't know, because think about it, John, he goes to run behind Cam Robinson on that left side. Used to running behind used to running behind Laremy Tunsil, knows Laremy Tunsil's tendencies, knows what Laremy Tunsil does, so he knows how to play off of Laremy Tunsil. He's never played with Cam Robinson, and you're going to give him the time to get acclimated throughout training camp, of course. But is that going to be like enough time if he doesn't know a disarray? Because if he's running behind, if Cam Robinson is the left tackle, if Titus Howard is the left tackle, now he's like, okay, now I've never ran behind Titus on the left side, on that left tackle side. I got to get used to running behind a whole new left tackle. And these running backs pick up on these offensive linemen's tendencies as well. So he knows, hey, if I come here, I know that this guy likes to push his guy to the inside. So I know that even though I'm supposed to run, I can bounce outside. So with the disarray, John, I don't know how early they're going to let Joe Mixon know, hey, man, this is what you need to do. This is who you're going to be running behind. And then you pick their brains and start to find their tendencies. Because even during training camp, the lines are going to be mixed, and they're going to be put in, and different players are going to be put in and out of the lineup. And Joe Mixon still has to learn how to, like I said, he's learning a new offensive playbook for what? Now he had to learn one in Cincinnati. He had to learn one when he first got to the Houston Texans, and now it's another one that he has to learn. And Joe Mixon is the one, I'm going to tell you from personal experience, Joe Mixon ain't going to complain. Joe Mixon going to say, hey, man, if they give me the ball, they put the ball in my hand, I'm on a run. But I just think that he needs to know early what's going to happen and what they plan on doing.
I think when I look at Joe Mixon from this year to last year, I want to compare some things. Tunsil was out for camp last year. Titus Howard was out for part of camp last year. And Joe Mixon was still able to have a successful year. So in terms of like knowing who you go run behind, this ain't nothing new for Joe. This ain't nothing new for Joe. And that leads me to, I think this is a big reason why with the Houston Texans renovating that offensive line, bringing in Nick Caley, promoting Cole Popovich, the message, and also looking for the one voice, one sound, one band, fighting the Bumblebee. I think the message, which is clear right now, is I mentioned this on our previous show. Listen, they need polished players and they need guys that will be able to come in and be able to practice the moment they get to Houston. Now, obviously, free agency, you're not going to practice the moment you get to Houston. But when OTAs and mini camps kick off, this cannot be like last year. And I don't think it'll be like last year in terms of, we got a vet that's sitting out right now who's not practicing for nearly a month. We got a guy, and they may be nursing the injury or getting back, coming back from a surgery. But for Houston, it does feel like, and this is why that conversation was like, what are you really going to get out of Trent Brown? Is he healthy enough to be able to practice day one? But for the offensive line, no big name, no overwhelming talent, NFL, I think, compared to the rest of the NFL, lines in the NFL. Overall, this is a group that needs the continuity, needs the cohesiveness, and needs to be able to play and practice day one. So I think this is where we should see a happier Joe Mixon. Like the question marks, I don't think will be there as long as they were last year. I mean, we knew Larry Tunsil was going to start. We knew Titus Howard was going to start. Didn't know where on the offensive line Titus Howard was going to start. But both of those guys was out last year, missed a good chunk of training camp. And I think for Laramie, he missed all the training camp. He was out there but didn't practice. And I think they set the offensive line back. So Houston bringing in new guys, new faces, and new places with a new coach running things, that's going to help out the overall aspect of the offensive line. But also, it should give Joe Mixon some clarity and put him to ease in terms of who he's going to run behind. And I also want to add what I think we're going to see more inside runs, more gap runs. That should allow Joe Mixon to be a little bit happier because the point of success won't be as far if I got to go just straight north and south.
Yeah. No, I agree. That makes perfect sense, John. And like you said, that point of him not playing and practicing with Larry and Titus, who were coming in out off of injuries, off of surgeries, minor surgeries. Yeah, you're right. That makes sense. I just still feel like that they should have a plan in place. They should have a plan in place, and they should have a plan in place early before going into training camp. And I understand that they're using this competition, that C word, the competition. But at some point, you got to say, this is what I want to see and how it's going to play itself out. The competition aspect is going to play itself out, of course. But I need to see day one, hey, this is who we're going to go with. Let's just see how this pans out.
Yeah. We got a group, we got a backfield that ain't gonna need no competition because they solidified. CJ Gardner-Johnson, Calen Bullock going into his sophomore year. What does that mean for the Texans defense on the back end? But overall, what does what does CJ Gardner-Johnson mean for Calen Bullock in his second year? I'm all over the place, but you know who's not all over the place? Armada, Nissan. They got a brand new Armada 2025. It's beautiful. If you got a family, this may be one of those opportunities for you to say, hey, you know what, wife, let's go to the dealership this Saturday. I may need a new car. And the Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart, the guy we believe showcases the strength and power needed to push the Houston Texans forward as we look ahead to next season. This week, Armada and clear-cut player of the week is Josh Connolly, left tackle, Oregon. Listen, we just talked about the offensive line, what that'll look like, and how solidifying the offensive line could give Joe Mixon absolutely what he needs to play behind a stout offensive line, something that he hasn't done a lot in the NFL. When I look at Josh Connolly, he's a guy that I think replaces Laremy Tunsil talent-wise and also replaces an elite pass protector by being an elite pass protector in the NFL, as we presume his talent will transition over from college to the pros. Held Abdul Carter to 0 pressures, 0 sacks when they played each other this past season. Only 9 pressures in 2 seasons. He's exactly what the Houston Texans need. 25 or an opportunity to be back and still acquire him and gain more picks in the draft. So when it comes to the Nissan Armada, they go with the conquer, and that's exactly what I think Josh Connolly could do here for the Houston Texans. It's clear that our player of the week is out there and ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in an all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big venture. NissanUSA.com. Well, again, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, CJ Gardner-Johnson is now a Houston Texan, right? We know that.
Yep.
Worked out Mark Astor, they're working out in California. D'Amico Ryans was smiling. We're mentioning him and his passion that he has for the game. He's a big trash talker when he's on the field. When he is on the field, he's on the field for 80% of the time. He has dealt with some injuries, but he's coming off starting 16 regular season games, helped Philly win a championship. And from week 9 to close out the regular season, only allowed 46 yards. Sarge, CJ in Houston means what for the back end of the defense?
It's funny, John, because we talk about CJ on the offensive side of the ball and what he's able to do. And now we're talking about a CJ that's going to bring a different type of, and what Jalen Petrie said when we had an opportunity to speak with him when he was out at the elementary school, add another dog to the room. And he is one of those guys that is the passion in which he plays, the passion in which he brings to the field. And not only that, John, I like guys who are able to flush out mistakes because I've watched CJ Gardner-Johnson play a lot. Like I've watched because I watched the Eagles play a lot, and he's one of those guys where, don't get me wrong, he makes mistakes, but it's almost like, hey, look, man, I made a mistake on that last play. I'm able to flush that out, and then I'm going to make the next 3 plays, and then I might make a mistake on another one and be able to flush that out and make the next 5 plays. And so he's one of those guys. You got to have those guys who has short-term memory when it comes to making mistakes. He has that swarm mentality. One thing that I loved about watching that video with him and Kamari Lassiter is like they were almost the same exact person. You could see their passion and them just going through and doing the drills, and you could see how much they wanted to get better, but you could just see it in their demeanor and the way that they acted. Derek Stingley said after during his interview after he signed his contract extension, he was like, "Hey man, them 2 guys right there, man, they almost like the same person." And so I think that what he's going to bring, and this is going to be the most important part, John. I think that CJ Gardner-Johnson is going to do for Calen Bullock what they wanted Jimmy Ward to do, except Jimmy
Absolutely.
Ward just couldn't stay healthy. If Jimmy would have been able to stay healthy, the exact same thing that I feel like Gardner-Johnson is going to do is exactly what Jimmy was about to do, because Jimmy was teaching him. Jimmy was showing him different types of things. Jimmy was, and especially when it comes to one of the things that Bullock suffered from last season was his inability to stop the run on a consistent basis. He has to become a better tackler, and that's not something that he had to do at USC. Their tackling wasn't something that he had to do coming downhill and making those type of tackles. He was drafted because he has great athleticism. He sees the field well. He sees the ball well. He'll go. That saying, John, that they say, see ball, get ball. He's one of those guys that may either when he makes a play, he either intercepts the ball or knocks the ball down. So he didn't have to do a lot of help and run support. And then when you're playing in DeMeco Ryans defense, one of the things that he does like is his safeties to be able to tackle, his safeties to be able to come downhill, something that we've seen Jimmy Ward do on a consistent basis. And so I think that CJ Gardner-Johnson is going to help him have that mentality on how to take the proper angles, how to come downhill, coming from so far away from the line of scrimmage, to be able to come down and get into the mix without getting into the mix. Now, CJ Gardner-Johnson, like Kamari Lassiter, they seek smoke. Calen Bullock doesn't seek that type of smoke, but he's also learning how to, hey, if I got to get in there and mix it up, I'm going to get in there and mix it up. And I think that's what Gardner-Johnson and his attitude, a lot of people don't realize that attitude plays a big part in what these guys do on the football field.
Yeah, you look at Gardner-Johnson cleaning up on missed tackles the last couple of seasons, specifically going back to last year. 59 tackles, only missed 6 tackles. And so, clean that area up in this game. At one point, he was over 9 or more in 3 consecutive seasons. You also look at Houston getting 2 ball hawks back there, right? And
Yes.
so with the pressure that we think, I ain't going to say we think, we know that Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, and the guys in the middle will create, and you have a linebacking group that has gotten better in pass coverage, that can cover sideline to sideline. When you look at Azeez and Henry, he's getting better. Derek Stingley and Kamari out there, that could really hunt offenses and quarterbacks. And you can look at whether you see a defense, excuse me, you can look at whether you see a quarterback check it down because they don't want to take their risk, or when they do take their risk, you got 2 guys back there that can go get it out the air. I also look at the potential of just letting Jalen Petrie roll.
Yeah.
He's gonna roam around, right?
Yep.
You don't have to. Now he's in a role where I can bring C.J. Gardner down to maybe cover on the third and short or whatever. I can just let Jalen be the guy that's out there stopping the run, dictating more pressure, and being an extension of that linebacker group. So that's a plus. But I think overall, when I look at Gardner-Johnson, I look at him bringing over a championship mindset. I'm looking at him bringing over some of the things that hurt him early on in his career and bringing that to Calen and saying, listen, man, I watched your game last year. You got the ability to go get things out of the air. What is it, 5 interceptions?
Yeah.
But to your point, Sarge, your angles on tackling coming down from 20 yards deep.
Yep.
Let's clean that up. Let's clean up, your tackle form. And these were some of the things that, as we praised the rookie last year, we were still pointing out like, okay, this was a big play given up by the young man. And he'll clean it up. Why Houston made the trade, in order to clean things like that up, to your point, man, Jimmy Ward, who, I think was more beneficial for Jalen Petrie. You can't trust Jimmy Ward to be out on that field anymore. Still under contract, got that contract extension. But right now, I think his role will be just a reserve player. And that's okay. Somebody that can
Yeah.
replace Jalen and not have to be back there deep for the Houston Texans, because I do think the trust isn't there anymore.
And he's been in the league, 10 years, if I'm not mistaken, Jimmy?
Jimmy's been in the league for a long time.
Yeah, so thinking about this, and I'm pretty sure Jimmy has the mindset. Like Jimmy's mindset in his heart probably is, hey, man, I can still play this game at a high level. But on the other side, people didn't think that I was going to make it into this league for 3 years. He comes out of a small college.
Yeah.
And so nobody even thought that he was going to make it in the league this long. So for him to have this type of career, I think that he's at that point where now he does, he can take a reserve role compared to maybe a couple of years ago. This would be probably freaked out if they tried to make him a reserve.
Yeah, he definitely would have requested a trade, which he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think CJ does a lot for this entire DB room. Again, it gives Jalen Petrie the free range to roam. I don't want to call him, what's my man, when him and Ed Reed was going back and forth, who's the best safety? I don't want to call him Troy Polamalu, but that allows for Houston to kind of use him like that.
Yeah.
You give that big brother to Calen Bullock, but ultimately, for a quarterback, do I get the ball out of my hands right now when I got that pressure on me? Do I chunk it? Both of those errant decisions from a quarterback under duress plays in the favor of Houston with 2 ball hawks on the backside of their defense.
And there's another thing. You're getting a safety who has, who's played in the Super Bowl, who played well in the Super Bowl, who had to hold, on that Super Bowl run that they had, throughout the season. He had to not hold, but he had to play against some of the top-notch wide receivers in the NFL, and to go against the first ballot Hall of Famer in Patrick Mahomes, who still has it. No matter what people may think, he still is Patrick Mahomes, and to be able to do what they did to him in that Super Bowl, but for him to be able to also command and dominate the position. What it also does, John, is last season there was a lot of uncertainty on the other safety. You knew what you were going to get from Calen Bullock. You knew even though he was a rookie, you knew that what you were going to get. You could see that from day one. It was always that other safety that you didn't know anything about. And so, like we said, you lost Jimmy Ward, and after Jimmy Ward, then you'll put in Eric Murray, who, by the way, I know that's your guy, John. So I'm going to make sure that I don't blaspheme and say, no disrespect, and I don't blaspheme him. He had a really good season, especially for a guy who was supposed to only have a limited amount of snaps, and he had to end up starting. But that uncertainty last year on what that other safety was going to give you is erased now. And now that you have C.J. Gardner-Johnson back there, it also helps Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley, because they can, when you know that you have that type of over-the-top help, you can play differently. You may be able to take a little bit more risk. You may be able to do a little bit more things that you wouldn't have been able to do because hey, look, I know Calen is back there, but I don't know who else is going to be back there. But now, if CJ Gardner-Johnson can stay healthy throughout the season, you know that, hey, look, bam, if I miss on something or if I take a risk on something, I know he has my back. And it also is going to make some quarterbacks hesitate because you're like, I don't want to throw at Stingley. I don't want to throw at Kamara. I don't want to throw at Calen because I know he'll go get the ball. But I also can't throw to the other side of the field because CJ Gardner-Johnson might take the ball away as well. And I know that these quarterbacks don't go with the mindset of I'm not going to throw at these guys. But you got to be hesitant in what you're going to do because the way that these guys are going to break on the ball now is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I do want to add, CJ did give up 8 touchdowns last year, so getting pressure from up front and having those 2 cornerbacks on the in front of him, Derek Singh and Kamara Lassiter, and Jalen Petrie down there roaming around. That's going to be in favor of him as well. When we come back, write a story, make it good. What does the perfect season look like for Houston Texans coming up? Welcome back, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. It's Friday. We are going into the weekend. We made it. And since we made it, let's write a story as if the Texans made it. Now, can't mention Super Bowl, Sarge. That's too
all right. Yep.
Cannot mention Super Bowl. But we're in April. Draft is 2 weeks away. What does a good story look like for the Texans?
A good story as far as what, John? Because I want to make sure that I get this right. Because if I don't, they're going to kill me in the YouTube comments. So, will you say what are we looking at? What does a good story look like as far as the season?
Starting now. Let's you know what, because we can revisit this. What does a good story for the offseason looks like? That includes a draft, and that also includes getting ready for training camp.
A good story for the Houston Texans right now, because I feel like that they've missed out. They missed out on making that big splash in the offseason like they did last year, as far as acquiring free agents and making trades. The best story, the best success story is you got to go in and you got to nail the draft. And by nailing the draft, John, listen, I know that a lot of people, I watched, John, as the Los Angeles Rams use their picks to go and win a Super Bowl. So I'm not saying F those picks, but I'm also saying, hey, man, look, sometimes you got to take the risk. Sometimes you got to jump out there. And people want to, let's harbor these picks, or, let's trade back and let's get more picks, or let's find a way to get more picks and more picks and more picks. No, man. If you see somebody out there that you want, if you see somebody out there that you know that can help your team, you know what you do? Hey, let's go get them. That's the problem that I don't like with some of the narrative around a lot of these things. If the Houston Texans see somebody out there that they want and they can get them, and this may acquire, you may have to use some draft picks to get them. Okay, go get them. You'll find a way to regenerate them and go and get them back some way down the line. If you have a good general manager, that general manager can get you those picks back later on. But right now, you're in a window where you have to win now because you want to harbor picks. But you got to remember that this cap space, although it's going to increase, players' salaries are going to increase. And you got 2 players that you're going to have to pay big time money. And that may cause you to lose out on some of the talent that you have on this team. So if you get to the point now where you say, hey, look, let's go ahead and get some of this young talent. We can hold them on this rookie contract because we know we got to pay CJ. We know we got to pay Will. So I say a good, successful story is you look at it and you say, how can I find me a good wide receiver and a good offensive lineman, some that I may have to take. I put it like this. Hey, man, Kelvin Banks and Matthew Golden know each other very well. And you can't get both of them in the first round if you just stay at number 25. So you find a way to manipulate that to get, and I'm just using those 2 as an example. Those are the first 2 that popped in my mind. So you find a way to say, I can get him and I can get him if it's going to require me to give up some later draft picks or whatever, or some future draft picks, I'm willing to do that if it's going to make my team better right now. Because, John, even with everything that's going on with the Houston Texans, I still feel that they are on the cusp of making an AFC championship game.
I'm going to write a story and I'm going to make it good. I'm also make it exciting. I'm going to go with Josh Connolly at 25, right? Give the offensive line the talent to get over the hump, right? You can have a lot of blue bloods, blue collar guys on that offensive line, but you need a talented SOB on there to anchor. And I think that's what Josh Connolly could do. Trading and just say, hey, New Orleans, we got a third for you for Olave. You guys ain't going nowhere right now. Y'all are going through your own little internal rebuild. We have a third rounder right here for Chris Olave. How do you feel about that? If they did not a third rounder, I'm okay with going with a second rounder. And you get Chris Olave, you get a proven wide receiver who has 2,000, 1,000 yard seasons in the NFL to play alongside Nico Collins. He's been a number one. Nico Collins is a number one. Now you have your number one tandem on your team for C.J. Stroud, and you also have a receiver in Chris Olave that doesn't have to work in chemistry with his quarterback. I also look at one of those other picks mid-round, and I will say, hey, I'm going to get a young defensive tackle. Later in the draft, between 5 and 6, I'm getting the running back, and I'm also drafting a wide receiver that can come in and help with the special teams.
Wait, John, you don't see me giving you the light skin eyes?
I don't think you can give light skinned eyes no matter how hard you try.
Wow. Anyway, wow. Thank you for that, John. Well, look, hold on, real quickly. I'm just giving you the light skinned eyes because don't get me wrong, I like Chris Olave as well. But if you get him, John, ain't he coming up on a contract extension here pretty soon? How much you got to pay him compared to getting a good rookie wide receiver in the draft?
But if you're
That's why I was
operating
giving
in that
light skinned
championship
eyes.
window, and with him coming off of an injury, you can have him on a trajectory of proving that you are worth the contract extension. Do I think
Stephon
that he's
Diggs.
going to make the money that Nico Collins made at 24 before he restructured? No. But he
Okay.
could be a receiver that can get Houston over the hump. And again, he's been a number one in the NFL.
I didn't want to mess up your story. I just had to ask. I'm like, wait a minute, because
It's riveting.
Olave is going to require more money that you're going to have to pay one of these rookie wide receivers if you get them right now. So that's why I was asking. I'm not trying to mess up your story. I got my own
In my
story. You know what I'm
story,
saying?
I got Michael Bay helping me with it. So we're going big. It's a lot of boom. But that just
I got
gives you
Ryan
some.
Coogler on mine.
I can't wait to see the movie. Centers, but that gives Houston the number one receiver, and that gives Houston the elite, presumably elite left tackle in Josh Connolly. And I think with the additions that they made, that gives Houston what they need, along with other moves in the draft, of course, to move forward. And to end it off, before we actually get into training camp and preseason games, everybody is healthy to play and practice and go to rookie mini camps and be at OTAs and get on the same page with Cole Popovich and Nick Caley in this new offense and helping out Joe Mixon.
Yeah, man. I mean, and look, don't get me wrong. I like your story, and I like the way because I'm a Chris Olave fan too. I think I really like the way that he plays his position. I'm just saying, man, if you can get those two, if you can get as I feel like if you can get Kelvin Banks, right? I like Connolly. Don't get me wrong, but I think that Kelvin Banks he gonna be one of them ones as well. So you can get him on that offensive line, the anchor on that offensive line, and then you get a Matthew Golden, who's proven to. But you know what though, John? Can I add something to my story? Let me add a little bit something to my story. If they do stay at 25 and they do stay Connolly, I think that a player that's going to be available, especially now with some of the recent things that has popped up in the news, you may be able to get Isaiah Bond in a later round.
Is Isaiah Bond what the Texans looking for?
I like Isaiah Bond. I think
We got
that
to talk about that next week. He is in
yeah.
some news where he has legal issues going on. They brought him in for a top 30 visit. Is he this version of the Houston Texans franchise player? So we'll see.
Yeah.
His story ain't over yet, though. We know that. He'll probably have a shot with either Dallas or Kansas City. Thank you guys for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. As always, get your jersey ready. I'm John Hickman. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12 and Locked On Texans page at Locked On Texans.
And make sure you follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Star Sports with the Z at the end.
Until next time, ladies and gents, peace. Enjoy your weekend.